I visited many countries, and I'm really happy to be here in Portugal today. And on my travels, I learned of a proverb that I think translates really well to the Java community, which is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I think that translates to the Java community and how you can get involved in working with the evolution of Java through the JCP program. And then we'll have a little bit of hands-on activity toward the end of the evening. But first I'm going to tell you a little bit about Java. So we go to the next slide. Most of you are probably familiar with Java. There we go. So yeah, Java was created 20 years ago. So this year in 2015, we're celebrating 20 years of Java. And Sun Microsystems developed Java with the father of James Gosling in Sun Labs in Cupertino, California, 20 years ago. And there are 4 pillars that contribute to Java's success that I'll tell you about today. And to start with, the first is on the next slide, which I can show you is scalability, what runs on Java. So you can see many devices run Java. We have automobiles, desktop computers, banking systems, commerce systems, phones. Basically everywhere there's Java. This is a small sampling of devices that run Java. But the first thing that really contributes to success of Java is the scalability. So you can use Java on a range of devices, all the way from very small embedded devices like Java cards to phones and desktops, all the way up to very large servers in the Java EE space. And the second pillar is ubiquity. And as you probably know, since you're here today, you're Java developers. It's the #1 development platform for Java. Year over year, it continues to be #1, and it continues to gain traction and interest from developers year over year, even after 20 years since the introduction of Java. And currently, there are 9 million Java developers around the world, which is pretty incredible, especially when you think about when I started back in 2000, there were only about 5,000 Java developers. So now we have 9 million Java developers around the world on over 3 billion phones, billions of devices, smart cards, desktops, automobiles, and financial systems, and continues to be the #1 choice for developers. So clearly Java is everywhere. And one of the reasons why is the compatibility of the platform. And what that gives you as developers is choice in the ecosystem, the broad ecosystem of libraries and open source tools that are available to you, as well as many compatible implementations that are in the marketplace. So that's, I think, very important to the success. And then the fourth and most important one, and one that I most closely work with, is the community. So the fact that Java is developed collaboratively with you, the Java developer community. This year at Java 1, Scott McNeely in the Java 1 keynote address, which is a big Java conference where developers from all over the world come together. Scott McNeely, who's the founder of Sun Microsystems and former CEO, stated that the JCP and Java was the greatest invention ever. So really, Java would not be where it is today without the community of developers that have grown up around it and contributed to its success. So I tell you a little bit about me. Those are the things that I think have led to the success of Java. I've worked with Java for 15 years. I started at Sun Microsystems in 2000. So working with the community closely, you are really the reason why I've continued to stay in my job and continue to enjoy doing the same type of role year over year because of the interaction that I have with the community in so many different countries and languages. So currently I'm directing the JCP program, but I started in the JCP program and it really was just getting started, and the community was asking for a way to participate in this invention that Sun Microsystems had. And very early on, back in 1999, Sun decided to introduce the JCP program, which was the way to embrace the community and build the feedback into Java technology. So I've been working on this for a long time, and I'm also a leader of the global Adopt-a-JSR program, which I'm going to tell you a little bit more about today, and hopefully you can get involved with that in your user group here in Portugal. I'm a fan of open source. I live in California. I'm from San Diego, and I like having fun, and obviously I think the community is fun, and I hope today we'll have a little bit of fun together. First, I tell you a little bit of history, so kind of 4 pivotal points in the history of Java. So starting in 1999, we have the birth of Java in Sun Labs, led by James Gosling. And then in 1999, we introduced the Java community process to embrace the feedback from the community. At that time, open source was not, very prominent type of development for software, but in 2006, pretty early on in that movement, Sun decided to open source Java. And not too much longer, Sun unfortunately had a little bit of financial difficulties, but really, the community kept Java alive during that time, even though there were no significant platform releases in that time. From 2007 to 2010, the community kept Java alive and active and vibrant. And then in 2010, Oracle acquired Sun and became the steward of Java. So Oracle's currently the steward of Java. We continue to use the Java community process to evolve Java, the platform and the language, and Oracle has invested a lot of resources into ensuring that Java remains the #1 platform of choice. And I'll tell you a little bit more about some of the things that Oracle has done since the acquisition to ensure that Java remains successful. And I really do think that Java would not be the success that it is today if it was not for you, the Java community. If it was a proprietary platform, it would be like many other technologies that have fallen by the wayside in the last 20 years. So that's why I continue to keep moving around the world and educating developers on how they can come and get involved. So how you can get involved and put your requirements into the process and give us your feedback. So these are the 3 things, the big 3 things that have happened in the last 3 years. So through the JCP, I have about 5 slides where I just kind of explain the structure of the organization. Does anybody familiar with the JCP and how it works? Or heard on a little bit about it? Okay, so that'd be my first part. Just tell you a little bit about how the Java community process works. We're celebrating 15 years. This is kind of the structure of our organization. Obviously, the main work of the JCP is JSRs, Java Specification Requests. And we have about 300 of those that have started going through the JCP, but there are really only about 40 that are active at any one time. And those are run by the spec leads. So each technology in the Java namespace has a JSR and it has a leader, a spec lead made up of members that serve on that working group. So that's where the core work of the JCP happens, is in these expert groups, JSR or work expert groups. And members of the community can serve as a spec lead, and members of the community can nominate themselves to serve on the expert group. And the Java developer community has an opportunity throughout the life cycle of the JSRs to give their comments and feedback and requirements into the expert group. And we also have an executive committee which votes on all of the work of the spec leads and the expert groups. And where I fit in the organization is I run the program management office, so I help kind of run the meetings with the executive committee. We meet several times a year where we talk about the direction of the organization and meet with several of the spec leads to hear about their progress. So that's the way our organization is structured. And we have a membership. On the next slide, I can show you that it's a worldwide membership, but we have not only individual developers who participate, but also Java user groups and nonprofit groups like the Eclipse Foundation and Apache. We have about 50 Java user groups. We have vendors like IBM, HP, Red Hat, Oracle, of course, and we also have some end users, companies like Goldman Sachs and Credit Suisse and Twitter that are participants. And individual developers make up about 75% of our organization. So what we've done now is we've made all of this participation free of fees, so it's free to participate. And on the previous slide, I show you a little picture of the executive committee. So this is the executive committee. We have about 25 members, so most of us are here. This was at our face-to-face meeting in January, hosted by Freescale, so that's the sign in the back. So Freescale is one of the executive committee members. We try to have a nice balance between embedded and ME providers, as well as kind of the EE vendors and some end users. Like we have a few banks that are on the organization, as well as Eclipse, and 2 Java user groups. So our 2 Java user groups that serve on the committee are the London Java community and so Java and Brazil. So two of the more large and active user groups in the world, kind of there to serve the interests of Java user group and make sure that the direction of the organization is serving the needs of the user group community. Since we have so many developers now throughout the world, we want to make sure that we have that perspective being put into the process. So this is us, we get together, and then on the next slide, I show you, this is kind of the core work of the JCP, the JSRs. But not only does the JCP require a specification, which is up at the top of the triangle, but as a standard organization, we also have two other requirements of each of the technologies that are unique to the JCP and that make it really special, which is a reference implementation. And so that's the code that's telling how to build this, from the specification. So the reference implementation serves as like a proof of concept for the specification. The specification describes what the technology should do, and the reference implementation is building on top of the specification. The JCP allows for there to be multiple implementations, of course, because like I talked to you about earlier, we want to have a broad and diverse ecosystem to allow multiple implementations of the specification. So this is just one implementation, serves as a reference implementation, and vendors can go and build compatible implementations on top of the specification. Well, all they need to do is pass the TCK, which is the compatibility kit. So each JSR has a TCK. You've probably heard of that term if you've been working in Java for any amount of time. So every JSR has a specification, a reference implementation, and also the TCK, the compatibility kit, which is code that the reference implementation runs against to ensure that the RI conforms to the specification. So those three things work together, and every JSR has that requirement to have a deliverable spec, a reference implementation, and TCK. So that's really the core work of the JCP, and many times what we see with the Java user groups is you like to get involved with the reference implementation. So that's the code. The code part of the process is the reference implementation, and as we have early access releases going throughout the process, that's a good opportunity for you to get involved before it's final, to take it, play with it, try to build sample implementations, or test your code against it. So this is probably the most interesting part for developers, is a reference implementation. Okay, now we can move on. And then every JSR follows the same life cycle. So we have formal review periods for every JSR, and they are all open now. So 3 open review periods and 3 votes by the executive committee, and every single JSR follows that same life cycle. So all of the JSRs for Java SE, for Java EE, and for Java ME all go through the same life cycle, and we also put our governance processes through the same life cycle. So when we make changes to our organization, we put it through the same process to allow the community to give us feedback. And we do this by open standards and open source. So as I mentioned earlier, back in 2000, Sun made this decision to open source Java, Java SE, and Java EE through the GPL license. And it kind of is something that's taken for granted now, but at the time that was something that people weren't too sure about. It was a very scary decision, but a courageous decision, because if you look back on it now, that really enabled Java to kind of move into the future and be the success that it is today. But at the same time, we've continued to ensure that we have standards, open source and open standards. In some ways, they're a little bit of a contradiction, but in the JCP, we found a way for them to work together so that we have standards that we can build the implementations to. But we do it in an open format using open source licenses so that the community can give feedback into the process by having the standard open, but then in the end, using an open source license so that developers can implement independent implementations and have a variety of choice. OpenJDK for Java SE. So right now we're at JDK 8, and that's developed through the OpenJDK project. And for Java EE, we have the Glassfish project. So that's for Java EE. The latest version of Java EE is Java EE 7. That's been finalized through the JCP. And we're currently working on JDK 9 in the OpenJDK project. And in the Glassfish project, we're working on Java EE 8. So those are the reference implementations for those JSRs, the open source projects. So reference implementation for Java SE is OpenJDK, and the reference implementation for Java EE is Project Glassfish. Have you all heard of those projects, by the way? Anybody working on any of those? Some of you? Okay. All right, so move on now. So one of the questions I get when I kind of give this kind of overview of how the JCP works is, well, why would I want to participate? So we have really, 4 reasons why you want to participate. And the first is to acquire knowledge. Working on these standards is a really good way to acquire knowledge and learn the technologies. To be the first to market and to be a leader in your organizations as well as within your Java user group. And the second is to build out some of your skills. So oftentimes as developers you have a little bit of a narrow job skill set, and if you work in the Java technology community space, you have an opportunity to work on skills like communication and collaboration and negotiation and kind of these working group environments, learning how to work together as part of a team and help each other to grow in your knowledge. So it's a way to kind of build up those skills that you might not have an opportunity to use in your day-to-day developer job. And the third is to grow your reputation and your network. So not only for you as an individual, but also as your Java user group. Working together through the JCP, you have an opportunity to work together in your local community and bring people together from different companies, but you also have an opportunity to work with other user groups in your country. So for instance, I know there are 4 user groups in Portugal, so you have an opportunity to interact with those other user groups through this program, but also with user groups around the world, throughout Europe, North America, South America, Africa, Asia, pretty much there are user groups all over the world. So this is an opportunity for you to interact with some of those user groups. And the fourth, and I think most important, is that you have the opportunity to make Java better. So you have the opportunity to take the experience that you have with Java and share it with the rest of the world to make Java a standard that's built not just on an ivory tower, but real world developer experience. So it's altruistic, but it's also practical in the sense that having that real world experience from developers from all over the world makes the standard that much better. Okay, so these are the things I'll tell you about just to review. The 3 platforms are evolution of the JCP and participation from Java user groups. So starting with the 3 platforms, we had the Java 8 release most recently, last year in 2014. Java 8, which is on the next slide, which Java 8, has anyone tried any of Java 8, experimented with Java 8? Yeah, so it's been pretty phenomenally adopted in the community since I've been working with Java, and even in the few years that Java started, it started in 1995, a few years after I started with the community. It truly is the most quickly adopted release of Java ever. It's been a phenomenal reception from the community in terms of introducing some really cool new features in terms of functional programming. So on the next slide, you can see everything that went into Java 8, but Java SE 8 was a platform release that was happening last March. These are all the things that go into Java 8. So this is one JSR, JSR 337, but it's made up of lots of other component JSRs. But some of the key things that were in Java 8 that developers have enjoyed the most and have been the most popular are the introduction of lambdas and the strings API, which kind of brings Java, as one of the spec leads said, kicking and screaming into the modern age. So those are some cool new features that developers have started to embrace, and we also have a new date and time API in Java 8, which has been very enthusiastically and highly anticipated. So that's something cool that's continued to evolve and push the language, and now we're starting work on Java SE 9, which will be released in 2017. And so the other platform release that we just had was Java EE. So that was released in 2013, about 2 years ago. Are any Java EE developers? Anybody using Java EE? Yeah. So on the enterprise space, so has anyone started with Java E7 yet? Or is it, who's using E6 still? Most people, yes. Okay, yeah. So with 7, we have a lot of cool new features, and I know Roberto's worked quite a bit with the batch application API, so that's a new technology that went to Java E7. Pretty cool. I don't know if he wants to speak to it and say anything about it.
Well, yeah, I can speak a little bit about it as well. So, Heather has been like a very good overview on what Adopt-JSR and Adopt-JDK are. But let me give you like a more practical view on the developer side, because I'm being a little bit involved with those projects. So I started a little bit working on the JSR 352, which is batch applications for the Java EE platform. And basically, it's actually when I met Heather, because I went to a conference, was DevOps in Belgium. Then I found like a couple of other developers there. They were saying, oh, we're trying to find like some bugs on the implementations, because I mean, when you're using a server or using JDK, I mean, it's also built like guys from like us. So it's also going to be error prone, it's going to have bugs in there. So there's people that actually try to find bugs on the implementation of JDK, the JSR, and everything else. So we're like running some tests and like building some tests over the implementations, and they taught me how to do that. And we actually found some bugs on the batch implementation on Glassfish. So then they taught me the process and how to report the bug. So I went to actually every implementation they can use like a different bug tracking. For the batch is Bugzilla, I think. So I went there, I reported the bug, then the spec lead got the bug report. He just like saying, yeah, that's a bug, we need to fix it. And yeah, I report the bug, and I can see there it's there, and I know when it's going to be fixed, in what specification, and what version of the server is going to be there. And yeah, so I was happy. So this was one of my first experiences. Now, more recently, who's here familiar with JPA? Most of you guys. Something that's going to be on the platform in a few years. So I think that's very, very cool, because sometimes when we're developing stuff, sometimes we don't like what we're doing because the API is not well built, or we think that something's missing. And you actually have the power to like go to the person that developed those APIs and develop those specifications and say, hey, this is wrong, let's do it in another way. And they listen. I mean, sometimes they accept, sometimes they don't. But I mean, that's discussion. And you can pretty much ask them why they choose this path or other path, and have like some cool discussion around it. So this is pretty much my experiences around the Adopt-a-JSR program, and especially with Java EE stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that demonstrates. So basically, all of these technologies are JSRs. Each one has a spec lead. Each one has an open issue tracker. Each one has a discussion forum where you can give your feedback to make it better. So these are final now, but most of these, as Roberto mentioned, are either doing new iterations or they're doing maintenance. So for Java EE 7, these were the new technologies that were introduced: the WebSocket, JSON processing, and the batch applications. And then these were revisions of existing technologies already in Java EE. And then later we'll talk about the new JSRs that are going to be part of Java EE 8. But it's the same thing. There are a couple new technologies, and then the others are being revised. So I think we just moved something.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Let's go to the next slide. Then also ME. Is anybody working on ME? So ME platform is also done through the JCP. Any ME developers? That's a little more of a specific skill set. So since no one here is doing that, so I can just come on it. But we also evolved the ME platform through JSRs developed in JCP. 2 major updates with 2 JSRs for a new embedded profile and a new VM, which is CLDC8. So we can move on from that. So the other thing that we do in the JCP is we evolve the constitution to make it more open and to meet the changing needs of developers. So as I mentioned earlier, in 2006, we evolved our licensing to use open source, and some of the needs, again, are changing, so we've started to make some change to the structure of our organization. So the first thing that we did on the next slide is we opened everything up, so I have a visual with the smoke-filled rooms. So it didn't used to always be the way, as Roberto described, in terms of being able to look at all of the issue trackers and the discussion. That used to be something that was private, that happened between only the spec lead and the members that they chose for their expert groups. But now we've opened it up so that there are open issue trackers and open discussion lists, so people like Roberto or you anyone can view the discussion that's happening on the technology as it evolves and view the issue trackers. So that was our first change that we made in the last 5 years. And the second one was merging the 2 executive committees. So as we continue to see Java kind of evolving and merging into one platform, we used to have 2 separate, very separate executive committees. Now we just have 1 executive committee because there's not as much of a need to view everything as separate. The things influence against each other. Like for now, Java EE is being revised and we're looking at ways to adopt some of the things we did in Java 8 with lambdas and stream API to kind of see some more convergence in the space. So we have one executive committee to kind of simplify things. And the next thing that we're working on now is JSR to broaden our membership, so to make it easier for Java user groups to join the JCP, as well as for individuals to join the JCP, and formally eliminating all of the fees for corporations to join. So if your employers want to join, to have you participate in the JCP as part of your job, it's easier to do that now for corporations because we don't require any fees. We used to charge $5,000 a year, which is a small fee, but for a corporation, and especially if you're in a development part of the organization, that can be challenging to actually spend money since you're usually a development cost center. So that seemed to be a barrier, so we're removing that barrier to make it a little bit easier for all of the groups to participate and get involved. But if you have other suggestions, let us know to make it easier, but those are the things that we're working on now. And then the next major thing right now that we're working on is changing our membership organization. So that's why I have the lawyers up here. The lawyers have to get involved when we talk about these things like licensing and the intellectual property rights. So we're working on a major update to how that works. And that will be a longer term effort since we work on that with the executive committee and everyone brings in their lawyers. We have groups of lawyers that work on this and decide how we're going to change the IP structure of the organization. But that's something that we're working on in the longer term. And so the result of all these things that we do in evolving the structure of the JCP is that the JCP is more open than it was before in terms of the issue trackers, the open reviews, and the open discussion forums. It's all open for you to participate. And so the next part of this, and the last part that I'll talk to you about today is how can you participate? Now that this is all open and available to you, how can you get involved? Because you can do it as an individual, that's okay, and as Roberta's been doing it, going around to the conferences doing it as an individual, that's great, but not everybody can do that. Not everyone has the opportunity to travel around and visit the conferences and meet face-to-face with the spec leads. So as a team, it can tend to be better and more effective, so that you can come together as a group within your Java user group and bring together your feedback and work on some of these things together and report it together as part of the team. So that's why a couple of years ago, Adopt-a-JSR was officially launched, and we worked together with two of the larger user groups, the ones that I mentioned earlier that are on the executive committee, the London Java community and So Java in Brazil. So they launched this program in support of the JCP to kind of take advantage of all this openness that we have now with the JCP. Instead of sitting on the sidelines and complaining about what you didn't like about the specification, this was a way to encourage Java user groups around the world to get involved and to work together and provide a little bit of a structure and guidance in terms of how to do that. So Adopt-a-JSR is the program and the way to get going with this. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it. We had started it with during the time of Java EE 7, that's when Roberto got involved when Java EE 7 was developed. And we got about 30 Java user groups participating in that release for Java EE 7, and then we added a few more with the Java SE 8 launch. These are not all of them, but a few of the more active user groups that participated. We had user groups from Brazil, Java more successful. So I think the user groups really appreciate that recognition, and it gives them that kind of broader platform to receive the kudos and the appreciation for the time and effort that they've spent to make Java better. And especially with the Java 8 release, I think that really contributed to the success of the platform because it was had much more of the user testing going into it. With a lot of the previous releases, it wasn't quite ready. We didn't have the developers who had tested their applications, so there were problems early on. With Java 8, we didn't have to. So these are the results of the survey that we did with the developers. Adopt-a-JSR, and the next step is to pick a JSR. So on the next slide, I have a few of the newer JSRs. Several of which I already mentioned. So on the left side, we have some of the newer EE8 JSRs. So there's CDI, the new JSON bindings that I mentioned. There's a new functionality with MVC, and then there's updates to several other of the technologies like JMS, JAX-RS, JSF. We have a new security JSR, an update to Java EE management, which hasn't happened for some time, a minor update to JSON P, which was a new functionality in Java EE 7, And then we also are getting new JSRs for Java SE9. So the focus of Java 9 will be modularity. So there's already one JSR for that. And then there are a couple of standalone JSRs which don't necessarily fit into any platform. For instance, there's units of measurement and the desktop application API. Those are two JSRs that will stand alone. Like most recently, we had another standalone one, the Money API. So we have a new JSR for Java Money now. So you can use that with either Java 7 or Java 8, but it's standalone. It's not required. It's not part of the platform. But if you're using that type of functionality in your applications, there's now that available, which is JSR 354, the Money API. Okay, so that's kind of the first step. And once you figure out your JSR, there's JSR pages here where you can go and look at it. I know in a couple minutes we're going to call up Yvonne and he's going to talk about a couple of them, but give you a couple ideas. But once you decide on your JSR, go to the JSR page. So we have jcp.org. This is what the site looks like. Every JSR has its own page and its own number, but they all look the same. They all have the same format. So they'll have the latest drafts here at the top in the table, and then underneath in the blue links, there's the communications forum. So that's where the public discussions take place that Roberto talked about, and then also their public issue tracker. So then, and there's also Adopt-a-JSR for Java EE. I think that's what we're going to talk about today. So you can find links to each one of those pages there. Adopt-a-JSR for Glassfish. And the next slide, if you decide that you want to adopt a JSR, it's good to add that into the matrix so other Java user groups know, and you can even try to do like a virtual thing like we're going to do today with Bulgaria. You can discuss with each other, discuss what they've been doing, and kind of share your expertise. So this is a good resource for you to have once you find your JSR. It's off of the wiki. And on the next slide, if you decide that you're more interested in OpenJDK and working on Java 9, there's a link to that program and how to get involved with the JDK project. So that's something that you could think about in a future meeting. Is it you want to focus on Java EE or OpenJDK, or you can do both. It just depends how much interest there is. But there are different links, whether you want to do Java EE or Java SE. And there's some suggestions too for testing with Java 9. There's a specific page here, so I'm going to provide these slides to you. There's a link there where you can go, and they have specific suggestions for testing your code against Java 9 and how to build your own JVM. So that's here. And on the next slide, there's, as we mentioned earlier, the issue tracker. So this is available for every single JSR. They have their own issue tracker, and it would look something like this. This is a Jira example, but a few of them use something different, like Mozilla or GitHub also has an issue tracker. Most of them have Jira, so you can file your issues here and also review the open issues for each JSR that have their own issue tracker. And it's really helpful if you put in here, this guy here had tagged it with Adopt-a-JSR, which is helpful for the spec leads because they, oftentimes they like to see that because they'll know that, oh, you at least are familiar with how things are working and that you've kind of collected things from your user group. So it carries a little bit more weight if you tag it with Adopt-a-JSR. And we also have a place where you can share your success. So if you've done a hack day together, share your knowledge here with the rest of the community. We also have a GitHub organization, Adopt-a-JSR GitHub organization. So you can join that. I think I have a slide of the Adopt-a-JSR GitHub organization on the next one. Hack days. So there's Roberto in the hack day. This is one of the hack days that we did at DevOps UK. Bruno's not here, but he was there that day, and we were meeting with the CDI spec lead. So that's from Red Hat, the CDI spec lead. Antoine, he was there, so they got together and worked. What did you work on exactly?
Actually, we were working on the JCache API. So at the moment, JCache API is just like a simple map where you just put like a key and you output the value. So we were doing like a CDI extension to allow you to like cache methods execution. So instead of just putting like the key to return an object, you could like cache a method execution, and then it will return the method execution output right away. So it's kind of like the project's not even done yet, but there's already like a GitHub repo for it, so I'll probably get a blog about it in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
There is a post also at Atomic Tribe blog.
Yeah, we've done a post at Atomic Tribe blog, but yeah, since it's not complete yet, but we hope that we can complete it in the next few weeks or something.
Yeah. So yeah, it's really open to what your needs are. So these guys got together and just talked about maybe something they thought they would like to work on, and got together at the conference and worked on it. So that's something that you can do here in your user group too. As you can see, it's only a few people. It doesn't need to be your whole user group to do it. You can have 3, 4 people. If everybody wants to do it, that's great. But having just a few people sometimes get together in a room and discuss something and get passionate about it can kind of kickstart your interest. So I encourage you to think about some of the things that you might want to do. And Roberto obviously has some great ideas of things you can do to get started. So I encourage you to do that. And I look forward to hearing about the things that you do. So I think I have maybe 2 more slides and then we can get Ivan on the phone. Yeah. So some people have posted their resources here for hack sessions that they've done. So you don't even have to do something new. So we have a few Java E7 hack sessions here, resources that the leaders put up here. So these are from days that they organized and some of the sample applications that they built. So one of the things that you can do as the reference implementations are further along is you can build sample applications and you can post them here. And then use those to provide feedback into the issue trackers. So if you do build a sample application, this is a good place to post it or put a cross-link to it on this page so that other people can utilize it. And there's some other resources that are available, but as I said earlier, I think communication is really key. So communication goes 2 ways. So discuss within your user group, but also share it with the spec leads that Roberto mentioned. They really are eager to hear your feedback. A lot of times, in my role, I do work with the spec leads quite a bit and encourage them to do outreach to the community, but oftentimes they're frustrated because they don't get any feedback when they put out their public drafts. So any feedback that they do get is very well received. As Roberto mentioned, they might not be able to implement it just depending on the stage of things, but it definitely is something that they welcome and that they encourage. So I encourage you to communicate your requirements and your feedback to the spec leads. And if you want to take a picture of this, you could if you wanted the links to some of the things that I talked about, how to stay up to date. I will also provide these slides so you have your website, but these are some of the links for you to get involved. And I think that's, oh, you want to take a picture? Okay. So we have, the website, jcp.org. We have the link on how you can join. We're pretty active on Twitter, so if you want to follow me at HeatherDC, or I also do at jcp_org. That's the JCP Twitter handle. So I post there when we file new JSRs, when we have new milestones for JSRs, when we have things like the elections for the executive committee or more at events or things like that. That's always, I always put that on Twitter. We're pretty active on Twitter, and there's also handles for Adopt-a-JSR for the wiki. And the user group leaders in London monitor the IRC channel. If you have any questions that are more technical in nature, someone's usually there to answer it. And then mostly the Adopt-a-JSR mailing list is for different user group leaders or participants to talk to each other and be like, oh, I want to do this JSR. Has anybody gotten any feedback on it? Just kind of discussion amongst each other and with the other user groups. So I encourage you to get involved. We really do need you to adopt a JSR. As I said earlier, we have about 50 user groups involved now, but really worldwide there are over 400 user groups. So a lot of user groups still to participate, and it'd be great to see some of the Portugal user groups getting involved and being active in the community. So I encourage you to get together in one of your meetings next year and work on that. And I think I have a short video that I can play while you're calling Ivan.
Okay.
It's a 2-minute video.
Yeah.
It's the Java community video, so just, I think, and you
You don't really need sound, right?
I have a speaker. I have a little speaker, because you should be able to hear it.
I can probably put it here on the TV.
Yeah, on the TV, it's better?
Yeah, I'll have to get the link, so I'll
Okay.
send it to you on YouTube. Okay,
You think it's better? Or you can just call Ivan. I was going to do that kind of in between to give the...
Yeah, sure. So, hello everybody. My name is Ivan Ivanov, and I work for SAP in Bulgaria. contributing to open source, driving initiatives in our JUG user group, the Bulgarian JUG user group, and also together with your friend Roberto, we are doing the book reading club in the virtual JUG. Thank you for having me. And yeah, to start with, our JUG exists since 2007, something like this. But after some very, very active few years, there was a small fall in the activity. We had a couple of meetings a year, maybe. And so we need a boost. We need something that will gather back our community. And this thing appeared to be Adopt OpenJDK. So I guess now everybody knows what OpenJDK is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that's what I learned. What OpenJDK is and what Adopt OpenJDK is while I was going to different conferences together with Roberto, of course. And I thought, okay, so this could be the boost for our job. We can find this as the method, the reason for gathering and for being together to try to contribute to OpenJDK in a way. So how do you start adopting OpenJDK? Or actually, how did we start adopting OpenJDK? We started first by trying to build it, trying to learn how to build it, because it's not the average open source project. You can't just go to GitHub, clone the repository, then pull it, and then call Maven to install or Gradle build. It's really hard to build it, but thanks to the work of the London Java community, we have great wikis, great instructions that contain great instructions about how you can build OpenJDK. So that's how we started. We started small, decided to learn how to build it, and we learned how to build it. Then came our first contribution. We built 3 virtual machines, each one having OpenJDK together with an IDE, Eclipse, IntelliJ IDEA, or NetBeans, with the projects imported. And we contributed this to the community. The next thing that we tried was looking into the future of OpenJDK, and the future of OpenJDK and Java. One of the future projects that is coming in Java 10 probably is Project Valhalla. So we looked at Project Valhalla and looked at things like generics over primitives. So you can do right now list of ints, right? You can do list of integers with capital I. But Project Valhalla is working on things like making this possible. So we looked at this, organized a hackathon where we were using again VMs prepared with the Valhalla builds, and yeah, it was fun. And then we decided that we can make the next step. And what was the next step? Contributing to OpenJDK. Now, what do you need to have in order to contribute to OpenJDK? You need to have signed the Oracle Contributor Agreement, the OCA, which Heather helped us a lot here. Thank you, Heather. Yeah, we signed that as a JUG, and then we tried to find a bug that we can work on. And we went into the bug database and found some bugs, starter level bugs. And we decided to work on one of adding get stack trace string method to the throwable class. So at the moment, most probably you know that can't get the state trace of an exception as a string. There's some workarounds there, and there are some implementations in Apache Commons, but in the JDK that we all use, there's no such a method. So we decided to add this one. And this was our first mistake. We didn't contact the core libs group and mailing list. So if you want to contribute to OpenJDK, first ask the sponsoring group, which I guess Heather can explain more details. So we created an implementation of this method, and we created some tests. And the tests in OpenJDK, they are not the usual tests that you write with JUnit or testng. There is integration with testng, but the way you write tests there is different. Then we uploaded our patch on a server. So again, the pull request mechanism doesn't work yet, although the guys from the 11th JUG community are working hard on this. But yeah, you have to create a special website with a special tool called WebRed, and you have to upload it on a web server of yours. So we uploaded this WebRed and published it into the mailing list of the core links group. There were some, they weren't very happy with our implementation, so we proposed the second one, which was apparently bugging in some situations. So yeah, it's now on a hold. So we haven't proposed yet a third batch, but maybe we will soon. I don't know. The next thing that we tried with OpenJDK is another initiative, which is cleaning up warnings, compiler warnings. This was a project that was led by John Darcy, and he did a great job for most of the classes. So we took the web services and XML repository of OpenJDK, and we cleaned up all the warnings there, and again submitted a patch. Again, we built the website, uploaded it on our web server, and sent the link to the group. And again, our mistake was that we didn't ask the group prior to doing anything. We didn't ask them, are you okay with us doing this? And of course, our patch was not accepted. So at least we tried, and we decided, okay, it's not for us. This thing. I don't want to discourage you. You should try it definitely. It's fun. Looking at the internals of Java that we use day to day is really interesting. But we decided to do something else. Adopt OpenJDK is part of an even bigger initiative, which is Adopt-a-JSR. And at the moment, Java 8 is in the works. So there are a lot of JSRs there, and most of them have published their first 30 drafts, and they're reviewed. So we decided that we can take a look at one of these JSRs, and this is the MVC 1.0 JSR. Which you might be familiar if you are familiar with Spring MVC or struts. So it's basically taking the best of all these existing frameworks. So we organized a hackathon in our JUG where we implemented most of the features that were already ready in the reference implementation of MVC 1.0 Ozark. And this is something that I would encourage all the JUGs to try. And you are very lucky in Coimbra JUG because you have Roberto there either by just trying it out and writing a blog post with your experience, or something that the Ukrainian JUG is doing. They took one special JSR and they're bringing non-stop feedback to the expert group. They are looking more deeply into this. So it's up to you. I mean, most probably Heather has already explained what you can do with talking to JSR.
Yeah, well, let me just say too, yeah, so all the JSRs, like Ivan was saying, they have suggestions on what the spec leads want. So that's really helpful. When I started talking about the two-way communication, that's why it's important that you talk to the spec lead when you decide on the JSR. Look at what they have there in terms of this is what we want from Adopt-a-JSR participants. They have them listed there on the community tab. So you can ask me if you have questions or need help finding them, but they have suggestions of what they want. And if you do decide for the Adopt OpenJDK, that was the adoption wiki I showed you, they have a bunch of suggestions, but most of them do involve testing. So like testing your applications against the current build of JDK 9. That's the feedback they really want. That's why it's important that it's a two-way street, so that you don't just decide, oh, this is what I'm going to do, and then once it's all finished and you've spent a bunch of time, you deliver it. No, it needs to be like a give and take communication. So communicate within your user group about what you think you want to do, what are your needs, what are you passionate about, and then find the appropriate leader and ask them what they think of that. So what do you think of this idea? Do you want this kind of feedback? And they might say yes, or they might say no, what we really need is something like this, and then you can take it back to your user group and see if that's something you're interested in doing. So it's like it's a two-way street. Yeah, I can understand how when you get a little frustrated with going off and doing something and then finding out that's not what they actually wanted. So yeah, I think it's really important that you do something that you want to do, but also that it's something that the community wants as well. So it benefits both sides.
Ivan, thank you so much for bringing your experience for JUG. So now I'm just going to ask if our members have any questions either to Heather or Ivan. So please feel free to ask them.
Questions?
No questions.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's more about the wiki and the site.
Look
What
at
will
here.
happen with the Java.net and how
Yeah.
the content that is there?
Yeah. Well, that's why I put the URL adopt-a-JSR.org, because right now it directs to Java.net, but we're going to move it to a different place. So we're in the process of moving it off of Java.net, but right now if you go to Adopt-a-JSR, yeah, it's going to take you to Java.net, but we're moving to a new infrastructure. So we'll have some links on the new community space on Oracle, but probably we'll do some pointers to other things like Google spreadsheets and things like that.
I've tried to navigate on the new site and it's a bit confusing to me. It seems there is not a lot there yet because most of the stuff needs to be moved to...
Yeah, we're still in the process of moving a lot of the pages. For the Adopt-a-JSR, jcp.org still remains as it is, so all the JSR pages you can find still all the links to the community development sites. Those will still be good with the wiki for Adopt-a-JSR is in transit right now, but I'm working on updating it. Working together with Martine mostly from the Lemon Java community, so it should be up and, throughout this month it's a little bit, in flux because I'm in the process of moving the pages off of Java.net to other locations, but it'll be moved in functional soon. Yeah. So I've been traveling this week. I'll go home tomorrow, and that'll be my big project for the rest of December is making sure that it's working. So yeah, good point. Don't get frustrated if some of the links on the Adopt-a-JSR wiki aren't working properly right now. I'm working on it, so it should be all functional again after the holidays. But the mailing list still works, and all the JSR pages still work. So yeah.
Any more questions? Yes, no. Okay, Ivan, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us again. And thank
you for having me and cheers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have some.
We'll get here in a while.
I'm sure you will. Okay, so thank you very much for having me and have fun.
Okay, thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This was the
qualquer maneira, temos ali uns brindes para sortear do nosso segundo aniversário e também faz parte dos brindes que vamos ter. Também temos cerveja. Aqui a Tommy Tribe, aqui, a empresa onde eu trabalho, foi gentil o suficiente para nos patrocinar a cerveja de hoje. Por isso,
Is that the sponsor for?
yeah, that's the sponsor for the beer. Tommy Tribe.
Most important.
Yeah. Por isso, podem ir lá, podem ir ali ao balcão, pedem a cerveja que querem, dizem que são de Coimbra JUG, eles apontam, não têm que pagar nada por isso. Está patrocinado pela Tommy Tribe. Mas, entretanto, vamos aqui sortear algumas coisas. Tenho que ir aqui à